Hey guys, it's Venom coming at you with another build video, and today we're going to be talking about a 1-bar heavy attack Warden build. Let's start first with our gear sets. We have Sergeant, Lightning Staff, Sharpened Trait, Power Glyph. 2-piece gives max health, 3-piece health recovery, 4-piece weapon and spell damage. 5-piece, when you deal damage with a heavy attack, you gain a stack of Sergeant's Focus for 5 seconds, increasing the damage of your heavy attacks by 645 per stack. This can occur once every second and stacks up to 4 times. For the 1-piece, we have a light slime crawl. Everything is all divines with max magic and the slime crawl provides 771 critical chance. We have a heavy sergeants for the chest. The other set is more scribes. This drops in the new trial Lucent Citadel. This is the perfected version. 2-piece gives critical chance. 3-piece minor slayer at all times, increasing damage done to dungeon, trial, and arena monsters by 5%. 4-piece weapon and spell damage. The perfected version gives another 657 critical chance. 5-piece, increase your critical chance by 128 for every major buff you have active on you, up to 1536 critical chance. It also increases your critical damage done 1% for every minor buff active on you, up to 12% critical damage done. So we have mortars for the shoulders, waist, hands, legs, and feet. We're all bloodthirsty trait, weapon and spell damage glyphs for our jewelry. And we have Oaken Soul. While equipped, you are unable to swap between your primary and backup weapon sets, and you gain minor berserk, minor courage, major brutality, major sorcery, major prophecy, major savagery, minor force, minor protection, major resolve, minor mending, minor fortitude, minor intellect, minor endurance, minor heroism, minor slayer, minor aegis, and empower. As you might notice, this gives a lot of major and minor buffs, which works perfectly with more scribes, which works when you get major and minor buffs. Our old set that we used to run, and it's still a fantastic set to run, is Infallible Aether. If you have this, you can run this set as well. This gives critical chance, minor slayer, weapon and spell damage, critical chance. It's the same 2, 3, 4 and first part of the 5-piece as Mora's. The only difference is the 5-piece, when you deal heavy attacks, you gain an additional 900 damage to monsters. Enemies you damage with a fully charged heavy attack are afflicted with minor vulnerability for 10 seconds, increasing their damage taken by 5%. Depending on the content that you are running, you may opt out and run Storm Master on your body instead of the light armor sets. It depends on your group. If your group is providing you a penetration buff, say you're in a trial and someone is running Crimson, Tremor Scale, etc., something that will provide your group more penetration, then this right here is a great set to run. This is also a great set if you're parsing on a 21 target dummy, which provides all these penetration debuffs. So Storm Master gives critical chance, weapon and spell damage. When you deal critical damage with a fully charged heavy attack, your light and heavy attacks deal an additional 1542 damage to monsters for 8 seconds. This can occur every 5 seconds. You can run more scribes in a trial depending on your group. I would probably recommend swapping out the trait. If you have a precise trait, if some people are providing, your penetration buffs, then precise is good to run in the trial. If they're not, you can still run sharpen. But again, it depends on your group dynamic, how your group is set up. But for solo and 4-man content, having this penetration is imperative to have on your build. Most of the time, that's not going to be provided, but you want to check with your tank and see if your tank is, say, running Crimson, for example. If they are, then just swap it out for a precise trait. Let's take a look at some of our skills. This is my typical bar layout that I run. Again, I do swap some of these skills out depending on what I'm doing. Screaming Cliff Racer, you command a Cliff Racer to dive bomb an enemy, dealing 9,453 magic damage. If you are more than 7 meters away from the target, you set them off balance for 7 seconds. After dealing damage, you increase your weapon and spell damage by 100 for 10 seconds, which quadruples after damaging off-balance enemies. Unstable Wall of Storms is from the Destruction Staff skill line. You slam down your staff to create an unstable storm barrier in front of you, dealing 1107 shock damage to enemies in the target area every 1 second, and setting concussed enemies off balance for 7 seconds. When the effect ends, the barrier explodes, deals 52-53 shock damage. You can trigger this explosion early by just reapplying the skill. This is very effective versus multiple targets. Next is Deep Fissure. Stir a group of shock to attack after 3 seconds, dealing 11,344 magic damage to enemies in front of you. After the shock complete their attack, they burrow underground for 6 seconds, then resurface again, 15,759 magic damage to enemies in front of you. Enemies damaged are afflicted with major and minor breach, reducing their physical and spell resistance by 5,948 and 2,974 for 10 seconds. This is a great skill to run even if it didn't provide the major and minor breach, because this thing attacks twice while you're weaving your other skills into your heavy attacks. This will fire 2 times, which fits perfectly into your rotation. So if you're running any build on the Warden period, you should have this skill on your bar. Green Lotus is a good way to provide yourself and some of your allies a heal whenever you do your light or heavy attacks. Embrace the Lotus Blessing, causing your light attacks to restore 1,710 health and your fully charged heavy attacks to restore 5,130 health to you or to nearby allies for 20 seconds. While active, you gain Major Prophecy and Major Savagery, increasing your spell and weapon critical rating by 2,629. Enchanted Growth is your burst heal, and you can help heal people in your team with this. See the large area of mushrooms in front of you, healing you and your allies for 10,795 health. Any target healed gains minor intellect and minor endurance, increasing their magicka and stamina recovery 15% for 20 seconds. Thunderous Rage comes from your Destruction Staff skill line. Create a cataclysmic storm at the target location that builds after 2 seconds, then lays waste to all enemies in the area, dealing 8,954 shock damage every 1 second for 7 seconds. The ability lasts 2 seconds longer when you use a lightning staff. I do swap out some of my skills again depending on what I'm doing. The Warden is just a loaded class. He has a lot of just fantastic skills that you can swap out. Another really good ultimate to run is the Wild Guardian, especially if you're running against a single target or a target that likes to move around a lot. So if something's going to run out of your Destro ult, or if it's just a single target, then you want to swap out your Destro staff ultimate for the Wild Guardian. You rouse a Grizzly to fight by your side. The Grizzly swipes at the enemy, dealing 2,888 bleed damage, and sometimes swipes all enemies in front of it, dealing 11,555 bleed damage and stunning them for 2 seconds. Once summoned, you can activate the Guardian's Savagery for 75 ultimate to maul an enemy for 16,178 bleed damage. It deals 100% more damage to enemies below 25% health. The damage has a higher chance to apply the hemorrhaging status effect. The Growing Swarm is a very good skill to run. I run the stamina version of this. Unleash a swarm of Fletcher flies to relentlessly attack an enemy, causing them to bleed for 20,999 bleed damage over 20 seconds. They rip through the original enemy's flesh, afflicting them with minor vulnerability for the duration, increasing their damage taken by 5%. Enemies near the carrier take 1,909 bleed damage every 2 seconds for the duration, and you can only have one of these storms active at a time. The Blue Betty is a good way to purge your guy, and it's also going to give you a damage boost. Call a Betty next to your side, which restores 4,992 magic damage to you over 25 seconds, and grants you Major Brutality, Major Sorcery, increasing your weapon and spell damage by 20%. Every 5 seconds, the Netch removes one negative effect from you. If no negative effects are removed, you instead increase your damage done 5% for 5 seconds. Deceptive Predator is a great way to increase your mobility on your character. You can run around with Major Expedition for 6 seconds, increasing your movement speed by 30%. You also gain immunity to snares and immobilizations for 4 seconds. While slotted, you gain minor evasion, reducing your damage taken from area attacks by 10%. Leeching Vines is one of these skills that I will swap out when I'm running solo. When I'm in a group, a lot of times it will accidentally go to another player instead of myself if I'm wanting this heal over time. So if I'm running like through an arena or just any kind of solo content, I'll swap out Green Lotus for the Leeching Vines. Vines embrace you or the lowest health ally in front of you for 10 seconds. They heal the target for 2,877 health each time they take damage. This can occur once every second. The Vines apply minor lifesteal to enemies that damage the target for 10 seconds, healing you and your allies for 660 health every 1 second when damaging that enemy. The Warden has some fantastic passives, especially when you're running in a group. This is a good way to put minor toughness in the group, increasing their max health by 10% for 20 seconds. So guys, just make sure that you do grab all of your passes for your class skills. Winter's Revenge is another good skill you can slot as well. You conjure an icy shard at the target location to scare enemies in the area, dealing 1,161 frost damage every 1 second for 12 seconds. The damage increases by 30% if cast with a destruction staff equipped. Enemies are overcome with bitter cold, reducing their movement speed 30% for 3 seconds. The ability also has a higher chance to apply the chilled status effect. Arctic Blast is a great heal to run if you're trying to just heal yourself, and it can also deal damage in the area. You envelop yourself with Winter Winds, instantly healing for 11,206 health. The winds persist for 20 seconds and chill your foes to the bone, dealing 1,716 frost damage every 2 seconds and stunning them after 2 seconds for 3 seconds after activating. The damage has a higher chance to apply the chilled status effect. Crystal Slab, sometimes I will slot this as well. This is very good versus projectiles. This is the strongest ward that any of the classes have in the game, but it's only specific against projectiles. There is a lot of stuff in the game this is very, very effective against. I mean, it can basically make your guy a walking tank. You spin the Shield of Ice around you, absorbing up to 40,341 damage from 3 projectiles. Each time you absorb a projectile, you launch an icy bolt back at the enemy, dealing 5,253 frost damage and stun them for 3 seconds. I mean, the Warden is such just a loaded class. If you guys haven't ran the Warden, you need to check him out. He is just a fantastic class to play on. So we have all of our passes for the Destruction Staff. You guys want to make sure that you pick these up. Crushing Shock is another skill that I will sometimes sub out for my spammable. If I need a ranged interrupt, this is the go-to to use. You will focus all your elemental energies with your staff and blast an enemy, dealing flame, frost, and shock damage. Enemies hit while casting are interrupted, set off balance, and stun for 3 seconds. We have all the passes for light armor. We're not running any medium, so that's not needed. We have all the passes for heavy armor. I'm a high elf on this character, so whatever character you choose, whatever race you choose, just make sure you grab your passes for it. The High Elf, I think, is the best overall for a Magicka character if you're trying to deal DPS. Alright, so let's take a look at our character sheet. This is what the base is, unbuffed. And then we're going to use a buff and see what that looks like. As you can tell, the Warden goes up quite a bit on his spell damage whenever he gets buffed by his Power Glyph and by the Screaming Cliff Racer skill. We have all 64 points in the max magic for the attributes. I'm running Blue Food. This is just max health and max magicka. Most of these buffs are covered by your Oaken Soul. We have the Thief Mundus, which increases your spell and weapon critical ratings by 1982. Let's take a look at our champion tree for the blue tree. We have Fighting Finesse. This is going to increase your critical damage and critical healing done by a total of 8%. Weapon Expert increases your damage done with light and heavy attacks by a total of 20%. Wrathful Strikes gives 205 weapon and spell damage. Untamed Aggression gives an additional 150 weapon and spell damage. For the red tree, we have Strategic Reserve. This gains 30 health recovery for every 10 ultimate you have. Slippery, whenever you're affected by a disabling effect, you automatically break free for no cost. After using this effect, you become winded and cannot trigger this effect or others like it for 21 seconds. Again, I always give a warning. If you're running Scale Caller Feet, you want to make sure you swap Slippery out. Just pick a different slottable that you like and put that on in place of Slippery. Fortified gives 1731 armor, balanced vitality, 1400 health. The green tree, treasure hunter, increase the quality of items you find in treasure chest. This also affects the drop rate if you're looking for gear, going through dungeons or whatever. This affects the drop rate that you get for those set pieces. Rationer is going to increase the duration of your food and drink buffs by a total of 30 minutes. Meticulous disassembly gives you back more resources whenever you break stuff down. Steed's Blessing increases your out-of-combat movement speed by a total of 20%. Alright guys, I think that pretty much covers it. If you enjoy the video, please like, follow, and subscribe, and I'll try to get back to y'all with another one. Have a good one.